fun problem. So my amazing PowerPoint that I made, I can't share right now, but that's okay because I'm on my phone because my computer is not even, it won't work. But that's fine. It will be great. I just won't have my visual aid.
I'm sorry, my fault with the link, but we're here.
Good.
Thank you for showing up.
Yes. But yeah, I'm gonna still follow my agenda. So I think we'll first start with a grounding breath and then we'll do some introduction. So we're gonna breathe in for 4 and then release for 4. And we're gonna do that 4 times. So let's breathe in for 4, hold for 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 1, 2, 3, 4, breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 1, 2, 3, 4, third time, 1, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 1, 2, 3, 4, breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4, and breathe out, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just notice your surroundings. Try to connect your feet to the floor or the couch or the carpet or whatever is near you. Think about how you could be present in this moment, even though we are always disrupted with many different things and distractions, and how we can connect across the bandwidth of the internet. Even though my preference is to be in real relations with people in a circle. So I'm going to imagine that we're in a circle. So we're in our virtual circle in the community, like we're telling a story. Today, my name's Laura Mann-Hill, and I use she, her pronouns, and I am part of the Art to Change the World community, as well as many other intersectional communities that I know you all from, whether it's family or friendship or former colleagues and or theater folks. So excited to have you with us today. And we're focusing on how do we disrupt colonial narratives through theater and storytelling. And I didn't want to spend too much time we know what a lot of the problems are that we face, right? And the heaviness of the world around us. And so I wanted to, on this Tuesday evening, just come together and spend some time listening to each other, sharing, co-sharing and collaborating together and learning from each other. Because I think that is one of the best ways that we can disrupt colonization and white supremacy and oppression, is to build connection. And so in the next 45 minutes or so, or however long you can hang with us, I hope that we can build some stronger connections between each other. And we'll start by, I'm going to pass this around the virtual circle, and just to share, like, however you'd like to introduce yourself, and how you're arriving this evening. And if you want to share that in the form of language, maybe your language tonight is dance. Maybe you want to just give an image or a thumbs up, however you want to introduce yourself, and just share how you're arriving. I'll begin to model. I'm Laura, and I am arriving very energetic and buzzing. So I'm kind of doing a little bit of movement. I've been working with children all day. I'm an educator, I'm a mom, I have a sick child. I had an IEP meeting today that made me really angry. And so there's just all the things, but I'm really like kind of letting that go for a little bit of time and just like shaking it out. So that's how I'm arriving, like energetic. I'll pass it to Karen.
Thank you, Laura. My name is Karen Winkler. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm arriving today with a bit of anxiety, but with an open heart because I'm here to learn and share in a subject that I don't know a lot about. So back to you, Laura.
Let's pass it to Carrie.
I'm Carrie. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm here because I used to work with Laura, and I just love being in any space with Laura. And I'm arriving feeling really happy. I feel like I've just made like progress on a lot of things, both personally and work-wise, that felt stuck for a really long time. So I'm feeling kind of a expansive, opening energy, and really glad to be here tonight with y'all. And I will popcorn to Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna, and I use she, her pronouns, which I always forget to introduce myself as. So I'm glad you guys are doing it because I always forget. I am coming to you today very overwhelmed. Work was just overwhelming today, and I missed the Zoom meeting that was a personal Zoom meeting like this one earlier in the day because I was so overwhelmed with work that I completely forgot about the Zoom meeting. So I'm mad about that. And I've just had a lot of overwhelming things. I've got too many irons in the fire, and I have too many balls in the air, and I'm dropping them all, I feel like. So I'm super overwhelmed today. So I'm glad to be here, I guess. And I can't see. I'm on my phone. I literally can only see myself. So
No worries.
somebody else. Okay.
I'll pass the ball of energy to Silvata.
Greetings, all. My name is Silvata. I'm a former colleague of Laura. She forces me to sign on to this. No, just kidding. I come in today with a lot of energy. I got my mile run in and just got an email from a former colleague. He is Lynn LaPointe. He is a Native American in Michigan. He has just asked me to sit in with his council to start creating curriculum for experiential education for Native kids in Michigan. So I'm excited. Who hasn't gone yet? Oh, my pronouns is he, him. Did we cover everyone?
You can, Tina, and then Kelly, if you want to introduce yourself too.
Sure, Tina, you can go first.
Okay. Bonsoir. I am greeting you in French because I'm a French teacher. And I'm an educator like Laura, and normally I teach every day, but today I had 5 hours of online learning. So I'm arriving to you feeling happy to be here, excited about all the learning that I get to do today, and a little bit overwhelmed by all the cameras. So if I turn my camera off for a minute, I'm here, I'm listening. I just need a teeny break. Kelly.
All right, that's understandable. All right, I'm still learning Zoom, obviously. That's why we had a few minutes delayed here, and thank you for still being here. I'm assistant director at Art to Change the World, and this is the Zoom winter programming we're doing called Cabin Fever Reliever. And so besides being an assistant director, I'm also an artist and a mom, and I'm actually heading out to the Madonna concert later. And I'm just kind of all flustered and with anxiety because I was trying to get everybody to the meeting and open a new Zoom and try to figure out all this stuff. Yeah, so I need to take a few deep breaths, but I love theater. I love writing. I wrote a screenplay. So I'm just really excited to hear what Laura has to say tonight and talk to the rest of you guys. So thank you.
Thanks everyone for sharing. Because even just a little bit, just to go meta, like, 5 minutes ago, I feel like we were more disconnected, and already just hearing from everyone on the call, it starts to you start to build some connection. And I obviously have the privilege of having connected with all of you before, and a lot of you in real life. And I think just sharing a little bit and being like transparent and honest about like how you're arriving in a moment, I think can be helpful to build some connections, because I can really relate. And they've even done research that shows like when you're listening to someone tell stories or just share out loud, like the neural connections start to like mirror one another, and you start to build like empathy and relationships. So I love stories. I love storytelling. Theater is really just another form of storytelling. So I'm always like really interested in just the many ways that we can connect. And I think one way that I wanted to start today with, like I said, I don't have my visuals because the many challenges that happen. But I'm a theater person, so improv. I wanted to start by thinking about, we all have probably different definitions of like what is colonization, and then like knowing that we want to disrupt it, and thinking about, our languages and the different ways that we may want to communicate tonight. And if anyone needed anything, like in terms of like, knowing anytime you show up in a space, there's always, I always like to make some kind of community agreements in terms of like how we show up for each other, and like together how we wanted to share. And something that I guess I'm looking for is just like just openness and like transparency and flexibility. Is there anything else that folks are looking for this evening, or that they need from other participants? But if anything comes up, feel free to like put it in the chat if you're like needing for someone to elaborate on something, or something isn't landing with you, right? Or and like knowing we're just all here to learn from each other. And I don't come here as an expert, but I find that anytime I come together in community, like I'm always learning. And so just like having an openness to learn from each other, that's why we're all here. So, now the first activity I thought we could do really quickly before I start talking about colonization, a little bit, and like how we define it. But let's just really quickly go around a circle and make up a story. And I'll just start it. Once there was a child who was lost in the forest. And I'm going to pass it to Carrie. Once there was a child who lost in the forest. Next.
The child looked around to try to find a path to get back to someplace familiar.
Kelly.
And when the child looked through the trees, they saw a tiger. Anna.
The tiger was looking back at the child like he wanted to eat him. Where was next?
How about Tina? Or whoever unmuted.
Yeah, the child wasn't afraid. She was surprised. She felt a connection. She felt brave. Sovata.
And at the same time, the tiger realized that is just not a human being, that is a human form. So the tiger moved towards the child, and the child moved towards the tiger, and they met up in the middle.
Karen.
Turns out the tiger was a stuffed animal being held by one of the brothers of this little girl. And when they met, they joined hands. She grabbed the tiger from him because it was one of her favorite toys to play with. And she gave it a big hug. She realized she wasn't scared because two of her favorite people and tiger were with her. And they walked home.
The end.
The end.
You can give yourself a round of applause for a story. So we just wrote a story in like, that was less than 2 minutes. And again, another way to like build connection. It's an activity I do a lot with. I've done with adults. I've done with young people, as young as like preschoolers up to, you know, through college. And I think when you start to build a narrative and story together, you start to also build like trust. You start to build those connections. And what we find with colonization and oppression is it's all about, you know, separating, you know, isolating people. I saw a visual that I had on my PowerPoint where someone had drawn a bunch of black dots on a white piece of paper, and he was like, this is everybody doing their own thing. Maybe they're doing great, maybe they're doing terrible. You know, but it's this is the lie that we've been sold, that like this is success, like all these black dots on this piece of paper, and this is success, and we're all doing our own thing. And then he turned it over and it was a web, and it was all the black dots connected. And he was like, you know, this is really the world that we want to build is connected, like people are connected. And there are so many systems that have separated us, and storytelling is just a really easy way to, that I have found at least, to really, in my experience, to really build connections really across many different barriers, age, racial, ethnic backgrounds, even language. You can find ways to tell a story through movement or visuals. As an educator, I use a lot of like puppet making and those kinds of activities. So I feel like it's a really powerful tool, and it doesn't cost anything, right? Like it's not something that you can commodify or buy. I mean, we do create things that do cost money, like going to the theater, but I think that's why I like to start with storytelling, because it's just something that we can co-create. So thank you for participating in the activity. The next thing I wanted to do is now move into like, how would you, I mean, I can define colonization, but what are some things that come up when you think of that word?
Well, I'll start. For me, you know, it has a lot of varied levels and ideas, but fundamentally at its core, it's aggressive, it's forceful, it has a very negative connotation to it of being forced upon. You know, I'm African American, so my, you know, thoughts about it, my history is, you know, being stolen from our land and then brought to a new land and forced to live here as slaves, etc., as my, you know, ancestors. So it's all violent and forceful and put upon, it feels like.
Other words that are coming up for people, or feelings, or
I kind of think of it as taking over. Some group of people are taking over another area or people or culture, and not in a good way. That's how I kind of picture it.
It's a form of forced control. So it's one of those things where they're not only forcing, but they're also controlling at the same time. And I personally have experienced that. The French took over Cambodia. I remember listening to stories of my grandparents and my parents, and the impact of the generational impact, the trauma. It went from my grandparents all the way to my mom and my dad. And you know, now I'm the only survivor of the current war. I'm now thinking about, okay, what sorts of trauma or genes are currently instilled in me. And my wife and I had a 23-year-old who is currently in grad school, pursuing mental health. She's now starting to learn about that stress genes that's currently in her, and it makes her a good counselor according to her advisor, because she can flex And I wonder how many of us roaming this earth or United States of America or currently have that gene flexing inside us, but we don't know how to control or use it. Because, unfortunately, if knowledge is power, that knowledge is not readily shared. So there's no power in us controlling ourselves and learning new things.
I think about the system, and how it's bigger than any of its parts, and how colonization harms, dehumanizes people who've been colonized, but also conscripts colonizers. I'm trying to learn. I'm somebody who teaches a colonial language. We're all speaking a colonial language right now. We live in a colonized place. Nobody here has been untouched by it, and I'm trying to, learn what that means for me, especially as somebody who has colonizer ancestors.
Mhm. Yeah.
Welcome, Margot. That's my auntie.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I feel like there's a lot about, like, I think about, so my ancestors came to the US, like from Ireland, from Germany, and, kind of just made their livings, made fortunes in some cases with extraction from the land, whether it was lumber, it was sugar in Louisiana, and being slaveholders, I learned, which was very painful. And I think about how, they came from generations of people who had lived in Ireland, in Germany, in tune with a land. Like, I saw when I researched my ancestry that, for thousands of years, they lived in the same place. And then, the Industrial Revolution, kind of social upheaval brought them over to the US. And they disrupted, people's lives, in order to thrive here. And so I just think about that, the grief of my ancestors losing their connection to the land and then participating in harming, indigenous people who had, a deep connection to the land here, harming Black people who had been, stolen. So yeah, it's really, it's very complicated and very painful. And yeah, but I think it just boils down to like such disrespect for land and people is expressed through colonization.
Oh, Laura, I think you're muted.
Oh, I am. I just said, sorry, welcoming anyone else who hasn't shared, what kind of colonization means to you, or what comes up for you.
Well, this is Karen. For me, it's more of a visual I get, and I only get like pictures in my mind of white people colonizing. I don't know of any stories of any people of color who have colonized. I don't even know if that's ever happened. So that's what I see in my mind, and it's all destructive. There's no constructive colonization.
No problem. Take care of those needs. Thanks, Carrie. Yeah, so I mean, I think all those things are all accurate, and I think it can mean different things in different parts of the world too, like from my understanding, but at its core, it's about all of the things that we talked about, right? Like control and theft and loss of language and culture, and that it has not just physical consequences for people, but like internal consequences, right? And things that we pass on to then our children, and continues generationally, as well as, so it's like health consequences and social consequences and injustices and exploitation, and then it harms the land and the water, and we are all suffering from that currently, so I think about that a lot. And so then when I think about, well, what can storytelling in the theater do? Because I'm like, what are my skills? I do think that you can start to rebuild and remember those connections to land and water and to people. I think that it is one way to start to like repair those and to start to heal. The other day in my class, we were sharing, I teach preschooler to fifth graders at a Minneapolis, and one of my kids, we had watched a video of some different kinds of dance, like from different cultures. And one of the girls in my class, she does jingle dress dancing, and we had watched a video about that. And then this other kid was like, and I asked them, what did you think about the video or things that they took away? And this other kid was like, dance is healing. Dance is healing. And then he did a whole puppet show about dance being healing. And then all of my students, this is without me telling them what to do. I had them break into groups to work on some creating something like inspired by the video, and a bunch of my kids got into a circle and started to share different dances from their culture. They said, well, I want to talk about my culture, and I want to share about my, and then they were demonstrating the dances for each other from different cultures, and we all learned so much about each other, and the kids were excited, and I could step back because I'm like, in my own way as an educator, we can be also upholding white supremacy and colonization and all of these harms by trying to control so much of what our students are doing. So in my little sphere of influence as a theater dance teacher, I'm stepping back and letting the students really take over that classroom, and they were really driving the instruction. And to me, that is very powerful, for those students to feel that agency. And now it's kind of, we're building on it. Like I said, it's because it shifted my thinking about what we should do next and what I should be teaching, because it's more reciprocal versus here I am here are empty vessels and I'm going to pour, here's some information. I mean, I could teach them a lot of things, but what do they really need? And what I am seeing in my classrooms is my kids need to heal. And there's a lot of healing because of generation. I mean, it's exactly what we're talking about, right? This is generational. And as for me too, in my own like journey of like being someone who's multiracial and coming from a lot of different backgrounds, and like, how do you reconcile your own identity with how your perceived identities, and what are you? So I think it is a lot of it is remembering, and then kind of like, yeah. And when I say storytelling and theater, it's like, I see it as a very encompassing, all encompassing kind of place, but I think it's a really powerful place to build connections. Yeah. Other things that are before I move on.
I was just going to say one other thing that kind of jumps off of, I think it was Tina was the language teacher. Is that right? And like Sov and I got to go on the Bedote tour this last fall, which any of you have been on it. It's the Minnesota Humanities Center does a tour led by Dakota guides of sacred, culturally significant sites around the Twin Cities. It's really interesting and impactful, but or no, some you weren't able to go on that, but maybe another time you'll be able to. But anyway, one of the things that really stood out to me, Ruben, one of the guides said, English is a transactional language, so it really lacks the ability to express relationships between people in place that Dakota can. And that really struck me, because I was like, yeah, English is a language that's picked up, so as it's conquered, as it's colonized different places, it's picked up all these pieces of language, but it's not as connected to a place. And I thought that was really fascinating, like the limitations of a language like that. So anyway, that I appreciated getting reminded of that by Tina.
Oh,
Margot,
can
I
say
don't know.
something?
I don't know how to mute you, but go ahead.
Yeah, I don't, sorry. Oh my goodness. The hostess spotlight. Can you, everyone hear me? I can't see anybody
Yeah, we
right
can. We
now.
can.
Okay, I'm Laura's auntie Margot, and hello to everybody. I've been trying to get on since about 6 o'clock. And so I'm kind of trying to pick up on what everybody has been talking about. And I had something to say. Hang on just a second. Okay. It's, well, you were talking a few minutes ago about music and about the arts. And one of the things, for people that don't know me, I am a retired elementary school principal, and I used to be a teacher at St. Paul schools. And one of the things that is very, very universal is music, with no matter what culture you are, music and art. And right now, as a retired principal, I'm trying to stay connected with the schools to make sure that through music, through the arts, that our children learn about other cultures in a very positive way. Because the way my generation, which was, oh my goodness, there we go. My generation, which was, I'm in my 70s, was very different about learning at cultures. Either we had nothing in history, or we had a little bit, just enough to maybe give me a false sense of security as an African-American woman, a very, very, very low self sense of security, because I had to kind of learn through my family, through my faith, through the arts. As Laura was saying, we learned a lot about my own culture. And I think it was Carrie, I see your name there. You said something about Dakota. And my grandchildren call me Unchi. And if you're familiar with that, Unchi is a Dakota word. So instead of being called grandma, they call me Unchi. And then when people say, well, what is Unchi? Well, Unchi came from a friend of my daughter's who is Dakota. And Lakota, is it Lakota? I get mixed up between Dakota and Lakota. Is
It depends
Lakota
on
the
the region.
language?
On the region to where you're coming from.
Okay, so Dakota is the language, or Lakota
Mhm.
is the,
It's
okay.
it's Dakota. It can be both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my daughter had a friend, met a woman, and she said, what do they call your grandparents or the grandmother in your language? And she said, Unchi. And so I have been my grandkids Unchi since they were born. And I think that's important, because wherever they go, if they are in school, well, my granddaughter is 6 now. My grandson is about 15, 16 months old. And when they go to school and they say, well, my Unchi, this or that, everybody stops in their tracks, because they don't know what they're talking about. And she can share, that's my grandmother. And there you go, you are sharing your culture, another culture, with other people. And I think that that is very powerful. And you were also talking about colonization. I am really way far back in what the conversation was, but when I think about colonies in the African American community, we didn't really have a colony. People dictated to our ancestors where they were going to be, if they were going to be together, and if they were able to have a family together. So anyway, Laura knows that I could be going forever, but I just wanted to share that information and let you know how my grandchildren, in school, and how important it is for cultures to understand each other. And I think the biggest thing is through the arts and through music, is really important about learning about each other in a positive way.
Yeah, I've done the tour that Carrie was talking about,
Mhm.
and also just been on other experiences. and learning the name of the land that you're on, the original name.
Mhm.
One of the tours that I went on, they talked about language is very harmful, and the fact that we're using names of people that committed genocide, you know,
Right.
to name of a lake. I mean, like when they renamed Makaska, and
Right.
you know, using the original names, that is part of the healing process for everybody, right? Because we
Right.
also have to unlearn what we've, you know, this is not Ramsey County, you know, like
Mhm.
I live near Bedote, and like Ramsey was not a good person, you know, and
Right.
so
Right.
the more that we can undo some of those things, like I think using the language is very powerful. And I've seen that in my classroom as well when we're doing storytelling and I'm telling stories from the places that my students are from, the like original tales from Somalia, or telling tales from that are Dakota stories from this land. And we're sharing the language and the words and learning it. And then there's a girl in my class who speaks Dakota, and she was helping some of the kids with the pronunciation, you know, and one of the kids was kind of being silly about it, and then she's like, you know, that's respectful to me.
Yeah.
And so, and like having that conversation, and I think is important for our younger people and adults.
Right.
You know,
Right.
sometimes it takes a little longer to relearn and re-remember. I heard a talk where a guy was saying too, he said it's funny, he said, you know, people say audiobooks and like all these things is so trendy now, and he was like, it's really just going back to what we as the people did originally, so it's not really new. A lot of the things like, oh, these are so great and revolutionary. So like I think sometimes our ideas of progress in under colonization is like very flawed, and it's not that we always need like new things. Sometimes we need to remember things that we already knew, or that like our grandparents and our ancestors have taught us. I did an activity recently where it was like a poem, but like with movement, and it was like I am from, and then like embodying that, which, and thinking about like how would your grandmother's grandmother move was the prompt when you're thinking about like where you're from. And it actually made me really think, like, because it's not I didn't know my grandmother's grandmother, but I do know her because she's part of me. And then it made me really start to think about all those threads. So I think finding other types of language besides just even words sometimes is also powerful. So I'm curious, like, what are some of your languages? Like, that doesn't have to be like oral language or, you know, dance. Is it art, theater? Like, what is it for you that can help disrupt things or break through, or things that you've
Well, food is also a part of it. The type of food that you eat, and the I don't know if you talked about this already, but food is a big one. Food, music, arts, food, the culture, to be able to taste other foods from other countries, from other cultures. And one of the things that we did with my daughter is we made sure she went to different restaurants, tasted Thai food, Hmong food, African food, all kinds of food. And if she didn't like it, fine, but at least we exposed her to the food, well, to the foods, so that, and learned about where this food came from. You know, it just doesn't come from the grocery store. So again, that the food and where our roots are in nature, another conversation that you could have with people, and you learn about other cultures.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was thinking about the food, like when you go to the Festival of Nations and you just go around and you can try like almost, you know, all the countries they have there, however many, you know, 75, 90, however many countries come there, then you can try them all. Laura, I'm going to stop recording on my end. And why don't you, to record on your end, I think you just go up to meeting. And then you're able to